Welcome to Deep Thought. 4 modes of thinking. Now, for this one, I'm going to read something from a gentleman I've mentioned several times, Master Yao and Yamache Morris. And this is from his book, Awakening the Master Masculine, right? Because a reality out here is that all people have 4 different ways that they can think about things, right? That they can approach it, that their brain will work. And it's actually something deeper, but I'm gonna just keep it on just the 4 things because I get into some real deep stuff then, so that's gotta take a little bit, right? But anyway, right, I'm gonna read this from Awakening the Master Masculine. The brain arrives at conclusions and makes a judgment based on one of 4 processes. These are integration, synthesis, deductive reasoning, inductive analysis. Deductive reasoning is linear, left brain, and microcosmic. It separates the subject into small parts and analyzes each one in turn based on the problem. It is a process of being informed, of learning definitions. The conclusion is then deducted from the information gained from the parts. Inductive analysis is abstract, left brain, and microcosmic. It separates the subject into its components based on the like functioning of the components. It then employs abstract analogies to work backwards from the desired conclusion to determine what steps must have been involved to get to that conclusion. We understand one thing by comparing it to another thing. Synthesis is holistic, right brain, and macrocosmic. In synthesis, you start by an examination of the big picture in respect to how the parts of the whole fit because of the system that connects them together. You're not so concerned with knowing the parts, but an understanding of the synergy that allows the system to work. Integration is intuitive, right brain, and macrocosmic. The mind does not come to a conclusion using this model. Instead, the subject is visualized and the right brain opens the mind to the proper conduits from which the answer can come. Wisdom about the subject is intuited into the mind from the cosmos, from the subconscious. I'll skip that part. We get into some deeper stuff. Anyway, the left brain must be stilled for this process and the mind is in a trance state. Once these inputs are received from the right brain, the left brain must figure out how to integrate these parts into the conclusion that makes sense. Often, the person will arrive at a conclusion and not really understand how they did so. Now, understanding what that means. In simple terms, it just means people think differently and people come to a conclusion differently. I'm going to use a great example everyone knows, right? Relationships. One big issue with a lot of men especially is that they look at relationships from either inductive analysis or deductive reasoning. They don't see the big picture. They see the parts, or they try to come to a conclusion, either by comparing one thing to another thing, or breaking down the parts, going step by step. Is linear. Which is why, but if you look at many women are more right brain, macrocosmic. They see the whole picture. For example, using the relationship thing, since I'm known for it, someone using a left brain analysis will try to think of a step-by-step way to date different women. And you see that in many coaching programs out there, the pickup artist community and something like that. It's like step by step. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And they often fail because it doesn't take into consideration the big picture. Now, the other way, the macrocosmic way, right? Wait, hold on a second. The macrocosmic way is just more looking at everything around it. It's like looking at the whole picture. Like, okay, you'll have men who will approach women in a linear manner, right? And it's like, okay, if I do this step, I do this step, step by step. And it doesn't work for them because it doesn't take in the big picture. But then when women look at a man, they take in like everything, even if they're not consciously aware of it. You know, a popular saying, which I've been shown to be true, is that women can take one look at a man and decide whether or not they're going to date him. Now, to the average man who's thinking in a left brain manner, that don't make sense. That doesn't make a bit of sense. It's stupid. But to someone in a right brain manner, it's because they make an evaluation based on factors coming from the subconscious, based on the entire picture. That's why, like, a woman can size up a man. I mean, she can take a few seconds and she sized up his shoes, probably his social class and a lot of stuff. But if you were to ask a woman to break that down, they probably couldn't. You know, that's more intuitive. And now some, depending on how much their left brain is online or their logical reason, they could probably do it or explain it, but it doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, I ain't gonna say it doesn't work, but it's still a macrocosmic thing. And, you know, what's interesting, you know, going with the theme of relationships, there are many men who are womanizers or players, or they're very in tune with women, actually come at it from a right brain perspective. That's why many artists, anybody creative, tend to be very good with women. Anybody with that's one thing. That's one of the things I found interesting. Anybody with any level of creativity, it could be an artist, a musician, a writer, a poet, tend to do better with women than average. That's because they tap more into their left brain. All right, their right brain. I'm sorry, and they looking at the big picture, and that's why a lot of times they can sit and read a woman. You know, and it's not right or wrong, because ultimately we need all four to really succeed in life. But everybody, depending on their culture and really as deep as their race, will have a tendency to lean towards something or the other, right? And I said I wasn't going to get into this part, but what you'll find, and that's probably part of the stigma between different races, is not that one is smarter than the other. It's just a different style of thinking. Europeans will have a great tendency to be more left brain. As a whole, this is a whole. This is and very generalized, because there are plenty of Europeans who, you know, very right brain, very intuitive, right? But if you look at it as a whole, the tendency is to be more left brain, and the education system actually reflects that. Well, ironically, with the European education system, it's actually based more on the Asian education system. Yeah. And there's some deepness with that, which I go into in another podcast. But the European tends to be more left brain, tends to use more inductive analysis. Asians tend to be more left brain, use deductive reasoning. And the education system as it exists now actually favors Asians, which is a reason. There's always a talk about IQ and, Asians do well on it. That's because the education system has an impact on IQ. I mean, if we're going to have a conversation about that, it really depends. When someone's tested, a lot of it is nurture and a lot of it is environment. Very little of it is like native IQ. And let me go off on that tangent for a bit. If you have someone who's like in an indigenous culture, they might not have a written language or something, but what's valued in that culture is to be able to hunt and kill, fight, whatever, then someone who does that well will be considered valuable and thus their intelligence in those areas would be, considered high. But then if you put somebody in a different environment where, say, the thing that's valued is the ability to code a computer, and then someone who has maybe a natural aptitude towards that, of course, it's going to be high. So it's, that just native intelligence thing is it's like whatever. It depends on the environment which a particular trait is expressed. So it's like, and I might do some stuff on that, and also multiple intelligences, right? Anyway, going further, when you look at the right brain, the macrocosmic, right? What is that? That's synthesis. That's more of a Native American thing. And how, if you look at their education systems or how they train the rites of passage, that tended to be more right brain, Yeah, they throw them out there and it's like, okay, this is what you have to do. You have to learn how to survive in nature, hunt, and all of that. At least that's what it was before certain changes. Anyway, and then Africans as a collective, more right brain, more, the intuitive thing. More inductive analysis, more, you actually had systems in Africa, particularly practiced by some of the more traditional societies that focus on someone developing their intuition and being able to draw information from like in a trance or something. And, it's deep, but it's ultimately, as I said, every single person, the more that someone can bring all four online, the better. Imagine if, someone, they have the intuitive part, but then they can do an analysis of what they just intuited and then be able to explain it better. Or I use the relationship example. One of the biggest things, and I do this in my coaching, I don't coach in a 1, 2, 3 manner. Do this, then do this. I try to get people to expand their mind so they can see everything. And, one time I was wildly successful with it. I took a guy who, he was more of the math type. Well, he had some leanings, intuitive leanings anyway. But then I was able to take it to another level. Because I would just have him do random things during it was a one-on-one coaching session. I just had him do random things. And then what had happened was his perception had expanded of what was going on. He was able to pick up on a lot of stuff. So that's a very important thing. That's a very important thing to understand the four modes. And it's deeper. It's deeper. It's stuff I'm still studying. But I'm just throwing that out there. See, one of the stigmas, just overall, everybody's too many people think everybody should think about things the same way and see the same way. And that's not the case. Even if you expand that to people who are on the autism spectrum. Now, just for personal reasons I don't get into, I've done some work with autistic kids before, right? And the thing with them is that it's not so much, I don't really consider it a handicap. It's just a different way of thinking. Now, if you change the society to be just societal norms or cultural norms to support the brain processes of autism, all of a sudden the outgoing people and stuff around here might look out of sorts. You get what I'm saying? They might look like they don't belong. So it's like everything is just a different way of thinking. And then you have whole groups, you have individuals. And one of the problems we have is the education system is based on the Asian education system. But that's not for everybody. I mean, if when I come to power and take global domination, I'm going to change the education system to where everyone's strengths are first assessed and then that's brought out. Some people can't learn stuff in the classroom. I know with my oldest son, he learns more by hands-on doing stuff. And he learns more hands-on doing stuff, and then he kind of needs to see somebody else do it. Like when he plays video games and he gets to a certain level, he can't get past that. He'll get on the internet, find a video where somebody did get past it, see what they did, then go back and do the same thing. And then another son, well, my youngest son pretty much taught himself how to read. he taught himself how to read. I was like, wait a minute. Like literally, he coming back to us and like not asking us what the word is, telling us. And there's a word for that. I can't remember what it is. I cannot remember what that word is. I think it begins with an H. But one of the things is, the bottom line is, just as there are 4 general ways of thinking, everybody can have each one of them, but everybody will have a different combination. So, it's not a question of who's smarter or even knowledge, but it's a question on how that person will learn and, how they think. And as I said, anybody can develop these 4 ways because it's a part of all of us. That's part of human development. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because as y'all can probably hear from it, this is a way deeper subject. Because just because I didn't want to get into deeper aspects, even to the point of not reading a sentence completely when I read that excerpt, there's so much more. Because trust me, just that little bit opens up to bigger things. So anyway, that's it for today. Keep rising and transforming. Peace.